Yesterday in the morning class, when you were talking about Guru Tapa, I was thinking about how can we understand the reconciliation between Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Diksha Guru, which is Bipin Bihari, and Srila Gaur Das Babi Maharaj,
Jagannath
Das Babi Maharaj, and how he's not mentioning the Bhagavad Parampara, and it seemed like the Siksha Guru was not giving prominence to the Diksha Guru, which is Bipin Bihari Goswami. That was, I think, maybe it's my confusion, misunderstanding. I was wondering if you can explain a little bit about that particular relationship. So, because sometimes people use that example of saying like, oh, Diksha is not so important.
First of all, you raise this question that people use this as an historical example to show that Diksha is not so important. Okay? So, perhaps you remember yesterday, the question came, Jiva Goswami himself raises this question, that if Harinam is not dependent on Diksha, in Padyavali is no Diksham, na cha Satkriyam, na Purascharyam, Managikshate. The holy name doesn't depend on Purascharana and all types of rituals, including Diksha. So, in the Diksha mantra, it is nothing but the holy name also, but in the dative case. In Chaturthi Vibhakti, in the dative case in Sanskrit. And also, there is a beach, and there is a word indicating prapati, surrender, at the end. And when they are taken together, by the wish of the great sages who have manifested these mantras, the mantras have a special power to establish your sambandha, your relationship with Krishna. So, the mantra, the Diksha mantra, has the power of the holy name and some also special power as well to establish sambandha gyan. So if Nam is not dependent on Diksha, then why would the Diksha mantras even be dependent on Diksha? So the answer is that the process of Diksha is a Pancha Sanskar, the 5 sanskars, and we discussed them in some detail, Tapa, and also what are the deep meaning of Tapa, the deep meaning of Udvapundra, and so on. Nam, Mantra, and Yag. So these 5 sanskars, they are undertaken under the guidance of a guru. And what is the purpose of these 5 sanskars? Parama Ekanti Hetava, they're the cause of Ekagrata Chitta, one-pointed consciousness. In other words, they remove from us 2 defects that we have. Vikshipta Chitta, which is distracted mind, and Kadarya Shio, unvirtuous habits, some irreligious habits which are not favorable, which also become the further cause of more vikshipta chitta, distracted consciousness. So because the living entity has these 2 defects, so he cannot experience the actual power of the holy name or mantra. Why? Because what is the power of mantra? What is the power of the holy name? What does the divine Shabda do? What kind of dharma does it have? Remember, what kind of dharma does Shabda have? Remember? Yes, spoke dharma. Spoke dharma. That means it has the power to burst into your consciousness and self-reveal the divine reality. You see? So actually, Diksha means to impart transcendental knowledge, the realization of your Ishtadeva and your relationship with him. So this spoke dharma of mantra has to be experienced. But unless you come to ekagrata chitta, the steadiness of mind, you become free from vikshipta chitta, the distraction, and free from kadarya shio, the irreligious and unvirtuous habits. Then until you become free from those, you cannot experience the spoke dharma of the holy name, you see. And that is why the process of Diksha, consisting of 5 sanskars, which is done under the guidance in the anugatya of the Diksha Guru, it prepares your heart so that you can experience the spoke dharma. Now look at the 2nd verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. What does it say? Yes, Dharma prajita kaitavutra paramhone matsaranam satam vedyam vastavam Bhatravastu Shivadam Tapatayam Bulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Parayishvara Sadyoritya Varutayatra Kritibi Susrusubis Tatsanat. This verse is describing the Bhagavat, the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Purana, and the way that the Bhagavat Guru Parampara goes on, the Bhagavat Sampradaya. So we have just discussed how the Pancharatrik Diksha takes place. So if there's a Pancharatrik Guru and he gives mantra and he trains the devotee through the 5 sanskars, he removes those 2 faults, then that disciple can experience, he can have the darshan of the mantra. You see? And then he becomes qualified to then give the mantra to the next person, and he becomes a Pancharatrik Guru Parampara. And all this is according to Vaidhi Bhakti. It's in Archan Marg, right? But it's not enough to awaken Braj Bhav. Shokole Jagati Mori Kori Bidi Bhakti Braja Bhava Paiti Nahi Shakti. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna himself said, this process of Pancharatrik Vidhi is not powerful enough to awaken the moods of the residents of Braja. For that Raga Marg is necessary, Bhav Marg, and that is the Bhagavat Marg. Understand? So in the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Sadhyo means immediately, Avarudyate atra. Krishna becomes trapped in the heart. That means he becomes bound by your love. So Krishna Vrindavan is only bound by that love that comes from Ragamarg, not from Vidhi. You see? Vidhi gives you Vaikuntha Bhav, and Krishna Vrindavan, he cannot be controlled by that. You see? So, and how is Krishna trapped within the heart? How is he captured by the spontaneous love that comes from Raganuga Bhakti? Immediately, Sajori Devaturudita Kritibi Susrusubis Tachanat. Kritibi means by the refined persons, by the accomplished persons. Susrusrubi, when they hear this Srimad Bhagavatam, then Krishna becomes trapped in their heart. You see? Now what does that mean? The question comes, what's the mean? Who are the Kriti? Who are the accomplished persons? Who are the refined persons? So it means those persons who have overcome Vikshipta Chitta and the Kadariya Shio. And how did they overcome it? It may be that some person has already come to this level by his previous life. And in this life, he just may meet a Bhagavad Guru and he'll get everything. But as a general sense, the Pancharatrik Vidhi works together with the Bhagavad Marg in such a way. Let's say you're a fallen person with a disturbed mind and bad habits. Then by the mercy of your Diksha Guru, he takes you through the Anutap, the repentance, the turning towards the transcendental world, the Urdhva, and Nam. And then you're cleansed a little bit and you're coming towards Madhyam Adhikari, opens the door to Madhyam Adhikari by giving the Diksha mantras and trains you in Archan. And in this way, your heart becomes steady, you get to the stage of Ekagrata Chitta, and then that Guru that passes away. He leaves this world. Now what will happen? If you've become Kriti, an accomplished person, you've become refined by the process of Diksha. Labdva nugra acharyat tena sandashitagama Mahapurusha abhyachan murtya bhimata apana. Jiva Goswami quotes this in regard to Kriti Susrusabhistachana. So from the 11th canto, Krishna said, the person who has labdva nugra acharyat, he is labda, he's attained anugraha, mercy, acharyat, from the acharya. How? Tena sandashitagama. He has been taught according to the Agama Shastras. That means Tantra. Here, Vaishnav Tantra. What's the main Vaishnav Tantra? Pancharatra. Now in Pancharatra, Brahma Samhita is a Vaishnav Tantra. There are so many Vaishnav Tantras. Okay? So, he's been trained in this. And Mahapurusha Abhyachan, he learned how to do Archan to the Mahapurush, Supreme Lord. Murtya Mata Atmana. and he's serving according to his own abhiman that Guru has given. This is actually a relation to the Shalagram Shila, because a devotee may have a Shalagram Shila, but the Shalagram Shila is not a Swarup of God. Supreme Lord has no like a Rasagula Swarup incarnation, like a bowl. So the Shalagram Shila is not actually a Swarup of God. The Shalagram Shila is called Bhagavad Arka Adhistan. That means the place where the Swarup of Bhagavan manifests. So let's say there's one Shalagram Shila and someone's worshipping that Shalagram Shila as Lord Narayan because they have a mantra to Lord Narayan. So according to his Abhiman, then in that Shalagram Shila, the Swarup of Lord Narayan will manifest. If someone has the mantra to Krishna in Vrindavan, then he worship the Shalagram Shila and Gopal or Damodar. But some Swarup of Krishna will manifest, you see.
At some point, not now, but maybe you could explain why is it that some Shalagram Shilas are called, for example, Govinda Shilas, Damodar Shilas, and so on, Shringa Shilas.
Yes, there are some marks on another side. But it may be a Shila, it is very smooth, and devotees worshipping, it may not have so many distinguishing marks. But according to the Diksha mantra and the Sambandha given by Guru, then you worship. And it's the place where the Swarup of the Lord manifests. According Murtya Bhimata Atmana, the Murti will come according to the Abhiman. Murtya Bhimata Atmana. You see? So this verse is just describing how one receives the mercy of the Acharya by becoming refined, becoming kriti, becoming accomplished person by receiving the Pancha Sanskars. Now you're kriti. So that person has overcome those weaknesses. He's in a position to immediately experience the spoke dharma of Harikatha. So when he meets a Mahabhagavat Vaishnav, who is the embodiment of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he's speaking Venu Geet, Pranay Geet, Gopi Geet, because he's refined, as that devotee is listening, it's just like going to the theater. He's seeing it. He's experiencing it like that. And because he's experiencing it and he's seeing Radha Krishna, he's seeing their associates, and his greed comes to follow the associates, and he enters into Raganuga Bhakti. It's a real thing, it's not speculation. Bhakti has to depend on spoke dharma. The progress that we make internally in our so-called bhajan, if it's not supported by the internal degrees of spoke, internal degrees of revelation of the holy name, then we're relying on the Prakrit mind. And that is called Prakrita Sahajya. We're relying on Sahajya, that is the nature of the Prakrit material elements. You see? So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur calls that Potalikata. Putalika means like a mannequin or a doll. If there's a shop and they're selling clothes, they don't have live models in the window, right? They have a mannequin and they dress up the mannequin in the clothes. So it looks like a human, but it's not a human. It's an imitation of a human, you see? So when we internally try to do bhajan and manasik seva, but without taking the support of the spoke dharma of the holy name, then it's actually not real bhajan. It's a mannequin or a model or imitation of real bhajan. So that's called pautalikata. From putalika is the mannequin or the doll, and pautalikata is that which has the nature of being an imitation of real life, but not real life itself. You see? So by the process of Diksha, then you become a kriti, you become a refined person. And then when you hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, just pure Harikatha, then one enters into Raga Marg and can directly attain Krishna Prem just by hearing. So it may be that your Diksha Guru refines you and then you hear Harikatha from him and then you go into Raga Marg. But in many cases, the Diksha Guru will give Diksha and then he'll leave, because it may take a person a long time to go through the process of Diksha. And then later in their life, they meet a Mahabhagavad and they just hear Harikatha and boom. So then you can say, well, which is the prominent connection? Which is the prominent connection? Right? So the Diksha Guru was essential and important. But without the Bhagavad Guru, the person, he can only go to Vaikuntha. Even he's worshipping Radha Krishna, but he'll go to Golok, not to Braj. Know the difference. The Krishna Loka planet it has an outer section that is called the Vaibhav of the Golok planet, and that is called Golok. And Radha Krishna are there, but they're married. And there's no Parakya mood, it's Swakya. It's like Vaikuntha. And the associates there also, they know that Krishna's God. The Vedas personified offering prayers to him. That's what the Krishna showed to the Brijbasis when he dumped them into the Brahmarad. And they saw, and it's like, oh, it's just like where we came from, but it's different somehow. Krishna's sitting on a throne and he's serious. And the Vedas are offering praise. Where are we? This is a strange place. Oh, there's no hunger here. If there's no hunger here, how will Mother Yashoda live? She has to feed Krishna Makan every day. And they didn't like it. Why? Because it was Golok, it wasn't Braj. It was the opulent manifestation of Braja. So that's the outer aspect of the planet that those who worship Radha Krishna in Vaidhi Bhakti can attain. But higher than that, inside that is Dwarka. And then inside that is Mathura, even higher. And then inside that, that is the Antar Mandal, the inner portion of the Krishna Lok. That is actually called Braj, Gokul, or Vrindavan. This is explained in Lago Bhagavata Gita. Yattu Goloka Nama Syat, Yatscha Tachta Gokula Vaibhavam, Tadatma Vaibhavatmancha Tasyatan Mahimun Mate. That place which is known as Golok is the Vaibhav Prakash of Gokul. Gokul or Vrindavan, where there's Parakya Rasa, where no one even has a guess. They cannot understand that Krishna is God. He's just the son of Nanda and Yashoda. Lord Narayan can be God. That is our goal, an object. It can only be attained by Raganuga Bhakti. You see? And then outside of that is Mathura, and then Dwarka, and then Golok, which is the Vaibhav Prakash. So Rupa Goswami directly described all these things in Lagu Bhagavatamrita. So here you see the Diksha was important to prepare the person, and the Bhagavad Guru was the most important because you would not attain the Raganuga Bhakti and enter into the Braj and Parakya Ras, Unnata Ujjwala Ras. Jaya Jai Ujjwala Rasa Sarva Rasa Sa Parakya Bhave Jahe Brajate Pracha. This Siddhanta is there. We sing it every morning. So profound. You see? So don't let anyone take whatever, some historical circumstances say, this proves that Diksha is not so important. Yeah? It might not be so important if you've got so many sanskars from your previous life. Just meet the Bhagavad Guru, away you go. No problem. Just like Shukadev Goswami. He just heard the Bhagavatam. He didn't have Diksha mantras and everything. He received a Brahmantra. Yam pravra jantam anupaitam apaita krityam. Anupeta kritya means he never underwent all this kriti, this purification and refinement, because he was already a liberated soul before he appeared. The moment he was born, he went to the forest and renounced everything. So that's an example of a person for him. Yeah, Diksha is not important, right? But are you like that? Did you just, like the day you were born, just take sannyas, leave home, and completely absorbed in Brahman? No. So then Diksha is important, and Diksha Guru is important. You see? But it may be that the person who gives you Diksha is also your Bhagavad Guru that takes you further. Or it may be that it's someone else. And so the two systems, the Pancharattvik Marg and the Bhagavad Marg, they work. There's a synergy between them that bring us to perfection. So before getting into the argument of the historical details of Vipina Bihar Goswami and Jagannath Das Babaji, know Siddhanta first. How can you analyze, how can you interpret history if you don't know Siddhanta? And on the other hand, you can't just reverse engineer the Siddhanta by looking at the history. Right? That's what the person's trying to do. They're trying to reverse engineer the Siddhanta by looking at the history and say, well, look, here's the situation, and it proves that Diksha's not so important, and that's the Siddhanta. You can't do that. Aitya, history, that's not our Praman is Shabda Praman, Shastra. And that Shabda Praman also can be interpreted, the idea Shabda Praman, in a weak sense and in a strong sense. Like in a Sadharan Rudibriti, that is in an ordinary sense, and Vidvat Rudibriti. So Shabda is Praman in an ordinary sense, that we should know what's right and wrong from the scripture. Like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tasmat Shastra Pramanam Te, karya vidanataha. Therefore, scripture is the praman on what to do and what not to do. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says this. This is the sadharan vritti. In other words, the general meaning. Shastra gives us some guidance what's right and wrong. That's one type of praman. But the vidvat vritti of Shabda praman is when you hear the Shabda, you see Krishna. The actual vidvat vritti of the concept, Shabda praman, is actually related to spota dharma. Understand? It's related to spota dharma. Srinoti ya idam spotam. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami explains the history about how the Vedas appear in this world. And he describes Srinoti yaha idam spotam, how Brahma experienced the spot dharma of Pranava Ankar. And it gradually revealed to him Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. You see? So don't think I'm making up these words, spot dharma. It's directly there in Srimad Bhagavatam about the appearance of the Shastra and how it gives direct internal realization. And that's why it is praman. That's not the soft meaning, the hard meaning. We have to come to that level. You see, this is the difference between the Kanishta Adhikari and the Madhyam. When your Kanishta Adhikari Guru says, yes, chant Hare Krishna, remember Krishna, and everything. So you're chanting and you're remembering, but you're not really chanting and you're not really remembering. You just don't understand that you're not really chanting and remembering. But Guru cannot, because the Katha for Madhyam Adhikaris, it will crush you if you hear it right in the beginning. It's just like, oh my God, it's impossible. Right? So it's very, the Katha for the Kanishta Adhikaris is the Katha of Archan Marg. Yeah? Because Archan, what do? You come in front of Radha Krishna and you say, Tato Vrindavanam Dayat Paramananda Bhadanam Kalindi Jalakalola Sangimaruta Sevitam Nana Pushpalatavada Briksha Sandaishtamanditam Koti Surya Samavasam Vimuktam Sattarankake Tanmadye Ratnakachitam Swarna Singhasanam Mahat Shri Krishnam Shri Ganashanam Purnananda Kalevaram Dvijubhujam Savadevesham Radha Lingita Vigraham. So if you're a Pujari, you have to serve the deity, you have to learn all of these verses. So you come before Radha Krishna to Tobrin. Now I meditate on Vrindavan. The Jamuna river is flowing, make a beautiful sound. All the trees of the forest are filled with flowers and bound up with beautiful creepers. The whole of Vrindavan is shining like 10 million suns. There's no hunger and thirst, material hunger and thirst there. There's a golden throne. And beneath the desire tree, and Radha Krishna sitting there. Ganashanam Purnananda Kalevaram Radha Lingita Vigraham. So, you see, I'm doing Smaran. But this is Archan. It's not actually the Anga Bhakti called Smaran. It's the sub-Anga, it's a sub-limb of Smaran within the category of Archan. You see, that's why Gurudev said, when you do bhajan, it's Archan. You see, because it's not actual bhajan. He said, but when I do Archan, it's bhajan. Because if Gurudev is serving the deity, he's not just remembering some mantras and thinking of what the meaning is. He's actually there in Vrindavan in his Swarupa as a Manjari and serving Radha and Krishna. You see? So this is the meaning. When you are doing bhajan, actually you're doing archan. Because what you're thinking is chanting, what you're thinking is remembering. It's not actually. You see, because some angas of bhakti, they're just one thing. Let's say about 64 angas of bhakti. So for example, it says, if the deity is going on procession in the street, you should follow the deity. So that anga bhakti is one thing. Here comes the deity, let's follow. Right? But some angas of bhakti, they're like a complex of many different things. So Archan is one of those things. In Archan, there is, putting on tilak, taking a bath, putting on tilak, remembering your Gayatri mantras, cooking in the kitchen for the deity is also Archan, offering arti, even collecting all the ingredients, the prafna, these are all parts of Archan. So for the Kanishta Adhikari, he's hearing and chanting and remembering. It's actually all parts of Archan. Understand? It's all part. He's not actually doing bhajan, but he doesn't understand it. He doesn't have the capacity to realize what actual Shravan and Kirtan and Smaran is. And therefore, when the Kanishta Adhikari is described, what does he say? Archayam eva haraye pujam yasradayate natat bhakteshu chanyetu sa bhakta prakrita smrtaha. The Prakrita Bhakta, he has strong faith in Archan. Now someone may say that, okay, I'm not a Madhyamadikari, but I'm not so bothered about Archan, and I like to do bhajan and smaran, all of these things. Yeah? But it's not a choice. You don't have a choice between Archan and doing bhajan in the Prakrita stage. Mhm. Your bhajan is still Archan, because that's the adhikari of the devotee in that stage. So this verse is correct. Archyameva haraye pujam yasrada eate. He has faith in Archan because he's bound to, because that's all he can understand. So gradually, after becoming kriti, somewhat refined and accomplished, then you can hear the katha, which is for the madhyam adhikaris. And then you start thinking, oh, this bhakti is not as simple as I originally thought. Srila Prabhupada's translation of this verse, by the way, Achayameva haraye pujam yasradayate, is fantastic. It's more of a bhav anuvad. He translates the verse what's there, but in the translation he adds more things to bring out the meaning. He said the Prakrita Bhakta has not yet made a complete and serious study of the Shastra in order to understand what the actual standard of pure bhakti is. Now, that's not actually in the Sanskrit of the verse, but Prabhupada mixed that into that verse to let us know the inner meaning and significance of that verse. Understand? That's why Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he says, Shastrartha is not Shabdartha. The meaning of the Shastra is not the meaning of the words. If you only take the words, you won't get it. You have to hear the words from the lips of Sri Guru to be properly orientated and have a properly adjusted understanding of the words of the Shastra. You see? So, I understand it. This is why I've come here. Because the time has come. You have to hear the katha, which is the primer for the madhyam stage. So, now we've made the platform of the Siddhanta. Now but we should not interpret Siddhanta through history. We have to interpret the history through the lens of Siddhanta. Now come to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was 42 when he received Diksha from Vipina Bihari Goswami. He was 42 years old. Who's the older than 42 years old here? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so okay. So you can imagine. He's Guru 42 years old. And sorry, that's the Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And his guru was, how old? 30 years old. Right?
At the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's younger than 30? Right? Can you imagine? Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's guru was about 30 or 31 years old, and he was 42. Now, he was born in a very illustrious Goswami family in the line of Janava Thakurama, in the community of the Goswami community of Bhatnapara. And very famous family he was born in. And he was a learned person, and he was a nice Vaishnava. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, at that time in his life, was very inspired by him. And he respected him so much. And he's written very nice things about Vipina Bihari Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written very nice things about him. So don't disrespect Vipina Bihari Goswami. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very grateful for that influence of Vipina Bihari Goswami in his life at that point in his life. We also have to say that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, being an eternal associate of the Lord, is having a pastime of going through the stages, And in order to revitalize the whole flow of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pure Siddhanta, among the communities where the Bhagavad Marg was kind of forgotten and the emphasis was on the Panchatric Marg, and even though people speak about Raganuga Bhakti, because they don't really understand Raganuga Bhakti, they confuse Raganuga Bhakti to be a kind of Archan. You see? Just like in the stage of Archan, you don't really know what Smaran is. But To Vrindavanam, now I'm meditating on Vrindavan. Right? You're really doing Archan. So then, the Kanishta Adhikari, when he thinks of Raganuga Bhakti and he reads Krishnam Smaran Janam Chasya Prastan, he's thinking that this Smaran in Radhamarg is the same as the Smaran that he's doing. So basically he's doing Archan, but he kind of more Brindavanizes it. He Astakarya Leelaizes it, you know? But doing the Archan style of Smaran, but taking the content which is meant for those in Ragamarg is not actually Ragamarg. It's Potalikata. Understand? It's an imitation of the reality. Because first, you become Kriti, you become refined, and then the Nam manifests Krishna's form, and then his qualities, and then his associates. And then when you meditate on him, that's Krishnam smaram janam chasya prastam nija samihitam tat tat katar chaschaso koryad basam braje sada. Now yesterday we were discussing how when a yogi comes in the state of ekagrata, if he thinks of something, his chitta transforms and becomes exactly that object. So what happens if you're in ekagrata and you're focusing on the associate of Krishna? Your chitta transforms and becomes just like them. Then you can follow the next verse. Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi. So the siddha roop is not like, let me imagine my 11 bars. Let's put together, a kind of photo fit image of who I am. When the police, they're trying to find a criminal and they interview someone and they've got like different sets of eyes and ears and stuff like that, and they put it all together to make a face, and they put that on the wanted poster, right? So your 11 bars is not like to, in your mind, make a photo fit image of what you're like in the spiritual world. That's not that's not the meditation on the Siddhadaya. When you are in ekagrata and you become absorbed Krishna and an associate, when you put the emphasis on the associate, your chitta transforms and your chitta becomes just like that associate, because that's the nature of the chitta in that state. The technical term in the Yoga Sutra is called samapati. And Narad Muni explains that in Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Kisha Paisa Kritaruda Kudiyam Tamusmaram Samrambhabaya Yogena Bindate Tatsarupatam. Narad Muni, he says, there was one little worm called Telkata, oilstone worm, and he's trapped in a small hole by a bee, a wasp. But the wasp is too big, he can't get into the hole, but he wants to get in to eat him. And so that worm is terrified. He's trapped, and there's this big wasp there. You can imagine how terrifying it is for him. And he becomes so absorbed in the wasp that he transforms and he himself becomes the wasp. And then he flies out in a new body. You see, that's the example given by Narad Muni. And that example is given by Jiva Goswami to explain how you get your Siddhadeha. It's by Avesh, in remembering the associates. That's why Rupa Goswami only gives 2 verses to explain Raganuga Bhakti Sadhana. Krishna Smaram Janam Chastya, remember Krishna along with the associate, residing Braj, and listen to Harikatha about their loving relation. And then Seva Sadhaka Rupena. And all the Kanishta Adhikaris are scratching their head, well, how'd you get the Siddha Roop? And so I know what it must be. Someone gives you a list. Right? And without that list, you can't do Raganuga Bhakti. You can understand the layers of confusion because they never heard proper Siddhanta. But if you're actually in that stage, you'll understand it clearly. Of course, if you become absorbed in the associate and you're in ekagrata, then your chitta just transforms and there's avibhav, an appearance of your swarup, and then you follow the next verse. It's obvious to someone who's in that stage, who's experiencing it, or someone who knows. Because if you're experiencing, then you can understand what the Shastra is saying, actually, and explain to others. You see? So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is in his pastime, because these misunderstandings, kind of, we can say, the archanization of Raga Marg had come about. Therefore, he, in order to change the whole and uplift and purify the whole Vaishnav society, he had to take Diksha within the Vaishnav community as it was accepted at those times. We could say in one sense it was a kind of infiltration. He had to go in there and be friends with everyone and then together uplift and correct the whole, because the Sampradaya was going off the track, and the great acharyas come and they do a course correction. You see? So that's what the 7th Goswami was doing. But what happened, he was very respectful always to Vipin Bihar Goswami. And Vipin Bihar Goswami himself also promoted he was very proud of his disciple. This Bhaktivinoda Thakur is so great. He really respected him a lot and he promoted him a lot. And the preaching was going on in a very nice way. And they made together the Navadvip Dham Pracharini Sabha. But just before leaving this world, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1915, he told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he said, the corrupted seed of the conception of Rupa Kaviraj will enter into the Navadvip Dham Pracharini Sabha like the poison of a snake, and it will spoil everything. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, I promise you, when that happens, I will do everything in my power to crush it and make sure that pure bhakti is still flowing. And so after Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur left, or even just before he left, he lamented that all the influence of Sampradayas that he'd pushed down by his preaching was creeping back into the whole Sangha. The Sangha had expanded too fast. The Sangha and his preaching was expanding exponentially. And what happens usually if you don't boil the milk, if you just expand without the training, more and more specific training, then what happens is then all the Sampradaya tendencies, they creep back in. And that happened just before Bhaktivinoda Thakur left, and he warned Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur about this. And so then Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur afterwards, he broke away from his brother Lalit Prasad Thakur and the Pracharini Sabha and Vipina Bihari Goswami and so on, and established the Gaudiya Math, because he was trying to explain Vidvat Ruti Briti, an actual Siddhanta, and to wipe away the tendency towards the Pautalikata and Prakriti Sahajism, but they were not listening. They had too many preconceptions about what bhakti is. They thought, I know, and they weren't listening. And who are you? You're the, we know Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and we're the, and his guru and everything. You're just his son. Who are you? What do you know? So he broke away from the Navadvip Dham Pracharini Sabha, said, okay, I'm going to start from scratch. And established Gaudiya Math. And we were saying the other day, he gave a definition of the Gaudiya Math. He said, what is the Gaudiya? He said, in a world which is filled with the Agya Rudhi Briti of sounds, the ignorant understanding of sound, just like the Kanishthadikari reads, Krishnam Smaram Janam Chasya. Remember Krishna? Yeah, I can do that. Here it goes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But actually they're still doing archan. They're not depending on the spoke dharma. Why? But why is the name not producing the spoke dharma? Because they're not kriti yet. They haven't been refined yet. And they're buried in so many nama-parads. Because they haven't deeply heard Nam Tattva from a Nam Tattvavid Guru to free them. If a person's tied up, they can't get out. Only someone who's free can untie you and make you free. So when we're covered in the nama-parads, and because of that, the seed of the name isn't sprouting. You see, the English word sprout comes from spot. It's a cognate. So that's not happening. So you're tied up, but only someone who's free, who's Nam Tattvavid, can come and delicately untie everyone and free us. You see? So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, in the world which is filled with the Agyurudhi Briti of words, the Gaudiya Math is the place of the divine descent of the Vidvat Ruti meaning of words. That's the definition of the Gaudiya Math according to Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. You see? So it's very, very important. And it was just his 150th anniversary. And so I translated this Gaudiya Darshan and all the different details about Vidvat Ruti, Agyurudhi Briti, Sadharan Ruti Briti, they're explained there. And even after 150 years, it was never translated into English before. So it's very important. This book is very important. Study it carefully. So, what happened was, after Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur left this world, due to the Agyurudhi Vritti of understanding the scripture, there was so much confusion. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur established Gaudiya Math. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has already discovered Mayapur, the location of Mahaprabhu's birthplace. But the community in which Vipina Bihari Goswami was staying, they started to say, actually Mayapur was on the other side. in Ramachandrapur, on the other side of Rudradweep, actually. And you can go there now. There's a temple. It says Prachin, the original birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah? That temple that says the ancient original birthplace of Mahaprabhu, it didn't open until 15 years after Bhaktivinoda Thakur established the Yoga Pith. A typical thing in India. There's the real place, and then some competitor who wants to get the pranami, and in the donation box, they set up next door and say Prachin. This is the Prachin, the ancient original place. So that's what happened. And so then there were all that community. They're on the case of Vipina Bihari Goswami. Said, no, that's not the side. This is the side. And he became somewhat uncertain. You see, and also if Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had emphasized Vipina Bihari Goswami, then they would have appropriated the charisma of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his preaching success, and said, we are the main line, and so on. So, because of the not that it happened while Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was alive, but there was a big controversy came after he passed away from this world. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, to not legitimize what was going on and conclusions in that community, which was against the location of the Yoga Pith and the teachings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So he put the emphasis on Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So generally, the Diksha Guru and the Bhagavat Guru, they're both very, very important. They're essential, and they work together to bring us to perfection. But in this particular case, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur decided to put the full emphasis on Jagannath Das Babaji as the Bhagavat Guru of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because actually he was much more influential, and especially playing the role of bringing Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur into Ragamar. Of course, he's always in Ragamar, but he's having a pastime. So in his life, Jagannath Das Babaji was more the influential and much more advanced. Vipina Bihari Goswami was in his 30s, Jagannath Babaji Maharaj was in his 130s. So there's no comparison. He was the Vaishnava Sarvabhauma. He was considered the greatest Vaishnava. Sarvabhauma means in all three dhams, Navadvip, Puri and Vrindavan. Everyone saw he was the topmost Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, you see. So there's no question in the stature and comparison. There's no comparison. He was the main person, most influential person. And it was Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj himself who had the vision and confirmed, yes, this is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. And then he was walking, he says, oh, this is Srivas Thakur's house. This is where the Chankazi's men broke the Mridanga. This was the Dvaitacharya's house. This was Gadada Pandit's house. This was Chandrasekhar Bhavan. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur discovered the birthplace Mayapur. But when he bought Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj to give the stamp of approval, then he located all the others. And he even told Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur how to make the altars. Make Gaur Narayan in the center with Vishnu Priya and Lakshmi Priya. It's a Golok Tattva actually. And then put the Panchatattva on one side and Radha Madhav on the other. There was many profound reasons why. If you come and perform Navadvip Parikrama with us, we can discuss all of these things. Please come on Navadvip Parikrama next year. So Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, there's no doubt about it. He was the most influential person. So the main connection is through him. You see? And actually, what happened was, just before Bhaktivinoda Thakur left, some of the Brahmins in that Bhagnapara Vaishnava community, they were saying, we are Brahmins, and the Brahmins are the gurus of everyone. You see? So Raghunath Das Goswami, Mahaprabhu gave him a Govardhan Shila. You know why? Because he wasn't a Brahmin, so he's not qualified to work for Shalagram Shila like Gopal Bhatta. This is a big insult. How can you say that Raghunath Das Goswami, the Prayojan Tattva Acharya, the incarnation of Rati Manjari, is not qualified to worship Shalagram Shila, but you are? This is Gaur Aparad. Severe offense. And this type of philosophy was going in that, and it was a family line. Because you see, Varnashram Dharma, Archan is integrated with Varnashram Dharma. There's a kind of overlap between the Archan mark and Varnashram Dharma. And so because of that, because they were really pancharatric in spirit, but they archanized Ragamarg. So it wasn't really Ragamarg. And because of that, they had the seminal succession. I'm a guru, my son is the next guru, and his son is the next guru. Like that. So it was like a mixture of Archan Marg and the Varnashram Dharma acting as if, oh, this is the pure Raga Marg. You see? And so only a person born in a Goswami family could have the name Prabhupada. And everyone else was Vaishnav Das Anudas. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, our Srila Prabhupada of ISKCON also, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Ramananda Rai. They were not from Brahmin families. You see? And also this is why Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't give Diksha to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, because it would be like starting another family line. That's why he wouldn't give him Diksha. You see? So he took Diksha from Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj. And he was the role of like a Bhagavad Guru and Shiksha Guru to him. But he didn't give Diksha because he didn't want to start a seminal line. That's called Jata Gosai. Jata Gosai. It's one of the Appa Sampradayas that you think the parampara has to be based on birth. So that community was involved in this big controversy, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was supposed to go there and enter into a debate with them. But because of his respect for his Diksha Guru, he didn't want to do that, and he had a pastime of illness, so he sent his young son to go and represent him. And that's where Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur gave the lecture called Brahmin and Vaishnav. Have you read that lecture? It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And he won the debate and defeated everyone and established that a Vaishnava is superior to a Brahmin, and anyone from any caste, when he becomes a Vaishnava, he can worship Shalagram Shila. So there was a lot of, let's say, controversy in that community, and we're not going to hold Vipina Bihari Goswami responsible, but he's kind of inseparable from the Bhagnapara Goswamis, who, and even today, I'm not giving any blame on them. I know many of them, and I have great respect for them. But at that time, there was a controversy. So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he decided that he would put the emphasis on Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and not on that family line, and thereby invest them with the type of historical authority over his descendants, over his Anugatjan in the future. You see? Now, the Bhagavad Guru Parampara, first of all, the Bhagavad Guru Parampara is described, the principle of Bhagavad Guru Parampara is described in the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. If you want, you can watch, I was on the Namaras podcast. You can see that episode, and I go into a lot of detail, giving many pramans from Shastra on that subject. So that's a subject for another day. Next year when I come, if you want, we can have one day only on that subject, Bhagavad Guru Parampara. But so the concept wasn't invented by Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. It's an eternal truth. But those who are in Archan Marg don't understand it. And that's why they say it doesn't exist. Even when it's written in the Sandarbhas, they can't see it. Even one person said to me, oh, that this Bhagavad Prabhupada which is described, it just means the line in which the book was passed down. What are you talking about? The Bhagavatam himself says, when you hear the Bhagavad, you smell the lotus feet of Krishna. That you become touched by the fragrance of the kumkum from the breast of Radhika that's on the lotus feet of Krishna when you listen to Harikatha. That's what the Bhagavatam says. And you're saying, oh, passing down the Bhagavatam means giving the book to the next generation. What are you talking about? The Bhagavatam itself said, this is a spoke dharma. What does the Bhagavatam say? You see? So they're clueless. They don't even understand that there are two margs, two paths, and they're different. And even the criteria for Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttam are described differently in Shastra, whether it's the Pancharatric Marg or the Bhagavad Marg. So Jiva Goswami described all of these things. So, what happened is, what I'm saying is, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur didn't invent this. It was already in Shastra. The principle. But the actual instantiation of that principle, that is the names of the acharyas in our Bhagavad Parampara, that also didn't come from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. Because what happened is, when this controversy came up that Raghunath Das Goswami couldn't worship the Shalagram Shila, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was disgusted, and he took a pen and paper and he wrote Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Narottam Das Thakur, Vishwanath Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Jagannath Das Babaji, like that. And himself, he wrote it on a piece of paper and he stuck it on his door. He himself wrote the specific Bhagavad Guru Parampara that we follow. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur just took that and then extended it until we come to the present day. And you see, that's the history of it. So, we don't want to say Vipina Bhagari Goswami is bad. We don't want to say the Diksha Guru is unnecessary. First understand the Siddhanta, and then with a very generous heart, being very gracious, and with great respect to Vipina Bhagari Goswami, and also without diminishing or minimizing or delegitimizing the present day Goswamis of Bhagnapara, we honor them. But if there's some mistake or misunderstanding in Siddhanta, it should be corrected in a gentle way and in an encouraging way. We don't want to offend, because they're also Vaishnava. Even a Vaishnava whose understanding is not perfect is also a Vaishnava. We should be very generous to everyone. So don't use this type of historical controversy to try to prove Siddhanta, and don't use it as a hammer to beat people over the head and persuade them about something or make Vaishnava parad to anyone. Be respectful to all Vaishnavas, interpret the situation through the lens of Siddhanta, but no, there was some controversy, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did what was in the best interest for their those who had taken shelter of them to progress. And what they did was always exactly in line with pure Siddhanta. Okay? Gaur Premanande.